Welcome to the Boynton Beach Community Redevelopment Agency's board meeting today, Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 at 5:31 p.m. May I please, Alan, would you please provide us with an introduction?
Yes, thank you. Hello and welcome. My name is Alan and I will assist the board chair and board members with the GoToWebinar portion of today's meeting. Before we start, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items so those virtual audience members know how to participate. Your microphones have been muted to reduce background noise. There will be specific times during this meeting when audience members can participate. The first way is by typing your question into the questions section at the bottom of the GoToWebinar interface. Those items will be read into the record by a meeting organizer at the appropriate time. The second way is by clicking on the raise hand icon, indicating you wish to speak. A meeting organizer will announce the next speaker at the appropriate time and unmute their audio, at which time you should state your name and address for the record. Please minimize any sources of background noise and speak clearly into your microphone during your allotted time. I will now turn control over to Board Chair Stephen Grant, who will be presiding over today's meeting.
Thank you, Alan. Well, first off, we'll do an invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please rise? Dear Heavenly Father and Motherly Earth, we thank you for allowing us to come to this meeting tonight. We know that you provide us with all that we have and the mindfulness of the ability to understand our own thoughts and the thoughtfulness to think about others when we are acting with our own actions. So tonight, we appreciate all that you do for us, and in your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Stephen B. Grant.
Present.
Vice Chair Ty Pensurga.
Here.
Board Member Justin Katz.
Here.
Board Member Christina L. Romulus.
Present.
Board Member Woodrow L. Hay.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
None for me.
None for me.
All right. Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as presented.
Second. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Tara, is there any news for legal? Or Catherine, nice to see you again.
Hi, Catherine Rossmel here tonight for Tara Dewey for Lewis Longman Walker, and nothing from legal tonight.
Okay, thank you. Informational items and disclosures by board members and CRA staff. Board Member Katz, would you like to begin?
Thank you. Nothing to disclose at this time.
Board Member Hay.
Thank you. Nothing to disclose at this time.
Board Member Romulus.
Chair, nothing to disclose. Thank you.
And Vice Chair Pensurga.
Other than my attendance at the Downtown Business Coalition the other week, no other disclosures.
As for myself, I also attended the Downtown Business Coalition for a Better, Brighter Boynton Beach. I did receive an email from Tim Collins to my attorney email address informing him I do not represent him and have not represented him. And then in addition, last Thursday I attended a meeting over at the Ocean Breeze East and got to hear the residents. And one of their concerns was mainly CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. It seems that because the design allowed for all the stairwells to be open to all sides of the roads, people are using it as a walkthrough to go through the community. So I think that's something that we really need to be mindful about when we're approving the site plans for these properties, that they have gone through a CPTED certification or review so that we are making sure that our residents and tourists and businesses are as safe as possible. Seeing no more informational items and disclosures, we'll move on to public comments. Individual speakers will have 3 minutes to present for items not on tonight's agenda. And Alan, I see that the ability to raise your hand and ask questions is on for our virtual attendees. Do you see
That is
anyone?
correct.
Do you see anyone raising their hands?
I do not see anyone raising their hands at this time, Board Chair.
Okay. Mr. Camilleri, I do not see an item for One Ocean on tonight's meeting, but I'm assuming that you're going to be speaking to us about 15C, hopefully with the 115 North Federal Highway. And seeing no public comments, moving on to the CRA Advisory Board. Michael, can you give us an update of what happened at last meeting?
We can't hear you.
So sorry. Michael Simon, Executive Director with the CRA for the record. Good evening, Board Chair and Board members. The CRAB Board was charged as a new assignment to review 4 properties within the CRA district. And the properties were presented by staff to the advisory board. And the CRA advisory board, after some discussion, decided that because there were several new members of the board present at Thursday's meeting, they elected to and voted to, I guess, essentially table the item so that it would provide them an opportunity to then go into the field, if you will, and do further investigation of the property and get more familiar with where it's located and what it looks like on the ground, so to speak. And then they would be coming back at their next meeting in June to discuss those properties in greater detail.
I'll speak to the board about this, is that we need to know about these items each meeting, because there's numerous properties for sale and they sometimes get sold quickly, sometimes they don't. So I'll probably attend the next CRAB board meeting to inform them that all the information is available virtually through Google Streetscape. If they need to take a view, that's probably the easiest and best way. There's property appraisers map that shows exactly the values based upon them. There's also other commercial and residential real estate sites that provide the recently sold. So, Michael, can you inform them that of the different websites like Looper, Zillow, Papa, and Google Streetscape to help make their decisions or research before? And
yes, sir. Well, just for sake of the board's knowledge, what is provided to the CRAB board are aerials and CoStar printouts, Papa printouts, and we, Bonnie and I, as we go through each property, do use the Google Maps and the Google Streetscape feature as we discuss each property. So I just want you to know that we are providing them every available, I guess, resource and technological advancement to try to assist them. But I will remind them of those particular websites at the next meeting. Absolutely.
Okay, because I think it's imperative that they don't table this, that they go through the properties, and if they don't have a selection, then put that in the first option to pursue at a future date if they don't know.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Now, moving on to consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull any of the items from consent agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved. With, if anyone's here to speak on that, I don't know if any of the audience members are.
We do have some. I said if they want to do it before or after. Is there any specific questions for any of the people? Okay. Do you mind making the second?
Second.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. So I know we have Aurora's Mexican Kitchen. If you'd like to come up to the podium and tell us a little bit about your business, just make sure the green light is on.
Yes, good evening. We're with Aurora's Mexican Kitchen. My name,
Turned it off.
there we go. I'm the vice president, and my wife, Aurora, is the president of Aurora's Mexican Kitchen. We moved into 410 East Boynton Beach Boulevard, Unit C, in November, late October, early November. So we've been here 6 months and just trying to get up to speed and get that unit up to speed for commercial kitchen use. And my wife can tell you a little bit about the products that we provide.
I am Mexican, and hello, thank you. My name is Aurora, and I am Mexican. I aim to cook the food that I grew up with, meaning the best ingredients, natural, the same techniques that were used or are still used in Mexico. I want to replicate that here. What I am doing right now is at the Green Market in Delray Beach. I have a booth. I am a vendor there, but I want to open a storefront business here in Boynton, where I can provide more food that people are asking for. I started my business because I couldn't find the food that I crave, and I specialize in corn-based food, meaning real corn tortillas, real tamales, and all from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so because you're in the CRA, we have programs, kind of the social media outreach program and different marketing. So we look forward to working with you on your journey of starting your business, kind of your dream.
Thank
and
you.
Please let us know when you're open so that we can stop by.
Okay. Thank you
Yes,
very
we'd be
much.
happy to. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will
Sounds
I will
delicious.
definitely be stopping by for a visit. One of my best friends is Mexicana, and I love Mexican food, so I will be there. Send me the invitation.
And is there any other of the commercial improvement grant programs that would like to speak?
Good evening, all. My name is Cled Oakley. I've been a Boynton community for the last 30-some years. My youngest addition of my family. I'm at 1600 North Federal, Unit 12 and 11. Like to clean that up and make it presentable, provide employment and good quality marketing to increase the business for local business owners.
And I'm sorry, what type of business?
Marketing,
Okay,
yes.
wonderful.
The marketing, we've got some good plans for the place and fixing it up and make it look nice and employ some of the local people. We already got 2 employees now inside and several outside in the field. So appreciate the opportunity to work with you and help the community.
All right, I appreciate that too.
Thank you.
And is there anyone else that would like to speak for consent agenda? Let me go check on line. Thank you, Alan. If anyone would like to speak on that, please raise your hand. If not, we'll move to CRA projects in progress.
Excuse me, Board Chair Grant, this is Alan. I do see a question that was just submitted by somebody named Brittany Patterson.
And it states that on behalf of Patterson Plaza, my family and our tenants, we'd like to thank everyone who has reviewed and considered our application. We greatly appreciate everything, and we're greatly looking forward to enhancing this area of the community, of our community, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And do we see anyone else with a question or hand raised?
I do not see any other questions posed or hands raised at this time.
All right, thank you. We will move on to CRA projects in progress, marketing, business promotions, and social media updates.
Good evening, Board. Renee Roberts, Social Media and Communications Specialist. Our business development team has prepared a presentation to share some of the social media marketing and business promotional initiatives that were executed throughout the month of April. If you could open attachment 1, please, Alan.
Stand by for a moment, please. It's a little slow. My computer is. I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. Perfect. And you can scroll to the 3rd page, please. Right there. Yes, thank you. Throughout the month of April, the CRA social media platforms were utilized to promote previous, current, and future CRA projects, as well as local businesses located within the CRA area. Here are some examples of the social media posts that were published. In April, we published posts to promote the spring issue of Redevelopment Works, which is our newsletter, and upcoming business promotional events that will be held throughout the summer. Next slide, please. Here are some examples of posts that were shared to promote businesses in the CRA area and encourage community members to shop and dine locally. These 2 posts were shared to promote to-go options available at Sushi Joe and scuba diving classes that are offered at Boynton Beach Dive Center. Next slide. Here are 2 additional business posts that were shared to promote shopping at Schur's Chocolates for Easter and job openings that are available at Bacciami Restaurant. Next slide, please. And you can continue forward, thank you. This quarter page ad was published in the Coastal Angler magazine to promote the Valve Tech and marine diesel fuel that is available at the Boynton Harbor Marina. Next slide. A quarter page ad was published in the spring issue of Marina Life magazine to promote the dining, fishing, diving, boating, and jet ski rentals available at the Boynton Harbor Marina. In addition to the print ad for the month of April, a digital banner ad that linked directly to the BoyntonHarborMarina.com was featured on the homepage of marinalife.com. I will now pass the mic to Mercedes for the remainder of the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. Mercedes Coppin, Business Promotions and Events Manager. Alan, if you could please go to the next slide. And one more, please. Thank you very much. In April, we completed the Boynton Beach Bucks promotion for your CBD store. The promotion ran over the course of 2 weeks between March 29th and April 11th. Our business development team worked with the owner of your CBD store to identify a promotion that would work well for her business. The special offer that was identified was for $10 off of a purchase of $30 or more. In total, 9 Boynton Beach Bucks deals were redeemed. And for the survey that we utilize for tracking of the promotion and to distribute the discount code, we had 93 responses. Out of those responses, 15% of the people said that they had previously shopped at your CBD store and 85% had not. And 83% were residents of Boynton Beach and 17% were non-residents. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here are 2 examples of the type of social media posts that were shared to promote the offer. In addition to sharing the offer on social media, the promotion was also promoted with custom posters that were displayed at your CBD store and also on the first floor of City Hall. We also shared the promotion to all City of Boynton Beach staff via an everyone email and to over 2,300 individuals on the CRA email subscriber list. Next slide. Our business promotions team participated at the city's extravaganza event where we distributed copies of our Like Local Business Guide and also vouchers for the Your CBD Store Boynton Beach Bucks offer. We gave those to all the parents that drove through the event. Next slide. In April, we also promoted the Boynton Beach Bucks offer for Quokka Go. The owners wanted to promote their extended hours and drive business to their location in the evening. So a deal was identified to offer $5 off of a purchase of $12 or more between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. In total, 14 Boynton Beach Bucks deals were redeemed. And for this promotion, there were 131 survey responses. 34% of the respondents stated that they had previously eaten at Quokka Go, with 66% indicating that they had not dined at the eatery. 78% were residents of Boynton Beach and 22% were non-residents. Next slide, please. And here are two examples of the social media posts that were shared to promote the offer. We also promoted this with custom posters and an email blast. Next slide. And one more. So on April 1st, the spring issue of Redevelopment Works, which is our quarterly newsletter, was distributed to the BBCRA email list, promoted on social media, and also published to our Boynton Beach Insider blog. The newsletter included a feature story that highlighted Board Chair Grant's message that was featured in the annual report for fiscal year 2019 through 2020. There were also articles about the public parking lot available at 115 North Federal Highway and the agency's purchase and development agreement with Boynton Beach Office Condominium LLC. Our Hit the Biz section provided business spotlights for Euro Market, Furniture Farm, H. Longo Allstate Insurance, Premier Medical Center of Boynton Beach, and Property Damage Consultants. There was also information about the various dining and marine recreation that is available at the Boynton Harbor Marina, as well as the 2 commercial dockage slips that are available for lease. The newsletter also included information about the ownership transfer of the Historic Women's Club of Boynton Beach to the City of Boynton Beach. And there were program details about the social media outreach program, as well as our Boynton Beach Bucks promotions and our affordable and workhouse housing grant programs and neighborhood signage and installation repair programs. Next slide. And finally, in April, we also published a blog to promote the 5 business promotional events that will be hosted throughout the CRA area during the summer. The blog provided a brief overview of each event, including the dates, times, and locations for all those upcoming events. And that does conclude our presentation. Are there any questions?
So I know that we have a lot of upcoming events. Are we starting to promote those as well?
Absolutely. So we are actually in the process of just finalizing a few things before we launch the marketing campaign, but Renee and I are working on the print marketing as well as our digital marketing efforts. And those will be released this week, actually.
Okay, thank you. And one of the other things is that with all the print media, do we plan on advertising with the Coastal Star?
We do not have the Coastal Star on our list. We were advertising with the Neighborhood News and with the Gateway Gazette. And we also intend to do a mailer to the zip codes within our area of all the upcoming events.
All right,
Would you like to publish with the Coastal Star?
Yes, I would like to advertise with the Coastal Star because it reaches, it is a free advertisement in the area, and hopefully the 2 other board members would provide a consensus for that. All right, and I got a thumbs up from board member Katz, so we have a board member. Thank you. So we do have a consensus to advertise with the Coastal Star too.
Okay, so we'll check with them regarding their deadline for publication. I'm not sure if we've missed the June deadline, but we'll certainly, if we haven't, we'll certainly submit for that, and then also in July.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, does the board have any questions regarding 13A? Hearing none, we'll move on to 13B, Social Media Outreach Program, second quarterly report.
Good evening, board. Renee Roberts here again, Boynton Beach CRA Social Media and Communications Specialist. I do have a presentation prepared for this. It should be in the S drive, Alan. It was provided to Bonnie.
Okay, stand by. Thank you. I have the file and now I am attempting to share the screen. If you'll bear with me for just one moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you so much. Good evening, board. Currently, there are 66 businesses registered in the SMOP program, and 98 have registered since the inception of the program. 3 new businesses were registered this quarter, and 55 businesses total were contacted between January and March. Next slide, please. The Boynton Beach Bucks campaign has given the SMOP program a unique opportunity to assist businesses in showing them how to run a multifaceted campaign to promote their businesses. The goal is to instruct businesses on the different digital marketing platforms so they are able to replicate the marketing strategy used in Boynton Beach Bucks. The Boynton Beach Bucks campaign is designed to attract local residents to patronize BBCRA area businesses in order to create regular customers for local goods and services. Next slide, please. The participating business is first given their free professional business promotional video provided by the CRA. The video is then used in a promotional ad on social media to promote brand recognition for the business. The SMOP program shows businesses how to publish a Facebook ad that targets increased video views to promote their published video. 1 week later, the Boynton Beach Bucks deal goes live. The SMOP program shows businesses how to publish a Facebook ad that specifically promotes a web link clicks. This type of ad can be used not only for surveys like Boynton Beach Bucks, but it can also be used to direct customers to a business website. Next slide, please. Oh, perfect, thank you. The participating business is then given a custom printed poster to hang at their location provided by the CRA, and the SMOP program shows the businesses how to design a free custom poster using canva.com. The Boynton Beach Bucks program also utilizes email marketing to help share the promotion, and participating businesses are encouraged to send out the Boynton Beach Bucks deal to their existing email list. They are also offered instruction on email marketing if needed. Between January and March, SMOP has assisted the CMIS 3, POPO, and Your CBD store with their Boynton Beach Bucks campaigns. Next slide, please. The Boynton Beach CRA social media pages have continued to grow over the last quarter. The BBCRA Facebook has grown by approximately 83 followers between January 2021 and March 2021. Our Twitter account has over 10,500 impressions between January and March. Next slide, please. The CRA Instagram reached over 7,000 users between January and March. Next slide. And future projects for the program include further assistance and development and recruitment for the Boynton Beach Bucks campaign, development of new social media strategies to assist local businesses, continued one-on-one business assistance, continued updates of the CRA's business listing, collaboration with the special events team for upcoming events, and assisting with recruiting businesses, creating the social media kits, and assisting with the social media during the events. Coordination with the Boynton Beach CRA grant project manager to promote the SMART program to our prospective grant recipients, and continued in-person business visits to spread awareness to the businesses in the CRA programs. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Seeing none, we're moving on to the CRA Economic and Business Development Grant Program update.
Good evening, Board. Bonnie Nicklin, Grants and Project Manager. This is just a recap of the current status of our grant programs for businesses. After tonight's approvals, we have a balance of approximately $131,503 left. And you can see a summary of those that you've approved since the beginning of the fiscal year. And below that chart, we also have a list of new business tax receipts that were issued in 2021 and for businesses that are located within the CRA district. And I'm here for any questions you may have.
Chair,
Yes.
I have a question for Bonnie. Bonnie, with that remaining number, 100, could you scroll up for a second? Was it 131,000? How many applicants do we have in the queue, and how many of them can we accommodate with the remaining funds?
Sure, I probably have approximately 8 businesses left that are in the process. They're all at various stages. Some have had their initial grant meeting with me. Others have started submitting partial applications. We will not have enough funds to support all of them. However, I believe that some of those projects are too early, that by the time the new fiscal year comes up, that we'll have hopefully new funding that they could apply in the next fiscal year, if that answers your question, hopefully.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item 13D, CRA District Lighting Improvement Project Update.
Yes, good evening, Board Chair and Board members. Twee Shutt for the record. This item has been requested to be brought back to the Board at the March 9th CRA Board meeting. The Board directed staff to present a list of lighting improvements for the CRA area that could be implemented within this fiscal year. Implementation may mean construction and or design underway or committed. In attachment 1, if Alan could bring that up, is a list and a preliminary cost estimate. Again, we won't know the actual cost until things are bidded out. These are sometimes quotes are given, but there's some projects that will need to be designed in order to be bid. So that as just as a FYI. The first, staff has also prioritized them. In the order, there's a column that has the priority list. The first one is the Ocean Avenue East lighting project. It's the lighting between Northeast 1st Street and Federal Highway. And the budget is estimated around $155,000. This will consist of painting existing poles, retrofitting the turquoise poles that are east of the railroad tracks to be able to look like what the new poles are at the town square site. Again, these are based on discussion with the Public Works and the city staff that's involved. Most of our current or our new lighting is really rented from FP&L. The city does not like to have to stock various lights, light poles, light fixture, and store them, but rather to have FP&L provide the lighting and install them, and then pay a cost of the operating for the lighting. So as we go through this, the number 2 prioritized item is the East MLK Junior Boulevard Corridor Streetscape, and that's estimated $125,000. And again, this has to be done in concert with new projects that are coming on, such as MLK Junior mixed-use project, so that it can be a comprehensive project that not only look at the light, but pedestrian amenities as well as landscape nodes, and to work with existing properties soon to be developed, or properties are existing and the owners would like to give a good facelift from that, so it could be a more comprehensive look. Also, the third one is the FPL conversion, the LED conversion. That is only just.
Excuse me. So rather than just listing them all, we have them in front of us.
I can just give you a quick, yeah. So if the board, the staff would like for the board to give direction on these, and
What I'll ask the board, rather than explaining, to see if the board has any questions first, because it's pretty laid out very well. I think the spreadsheet, you did a great job. And the one thing that I would want is to see about moving the Ocean Avenue Bridge priority up. Because of that space underneath the bridge, it is something that I do feel that we can help promote with more lighting and create definitely a safer space for people to travel that way. Yes, Board Member Katz.
A question for staff. So the total cost of all the projects is 141 grand over what we have allocated. Is there anything definitive in the current fiscal year budget that we know we are not going to spend to fill that gap and potentially green light the entire list?
At the current moment, Board Member Katz, I would say that we will, in identifying money for other items on the agenda this evening, I would honestly say that as we move into June and July, we would be able to, as we prepare for our budget, and our rollovers for budget, we'll be able to identify additional funding that you could reallocate in this fiscal year. And seeing that some of these projects will most likely perhaps begin before October 1st, there will be others that might not. So we will have an opportunity to kind of fund those with next year's budget if for some reason we can't find that extra $100,000-something. But we will make sure that at each month we bring forth to you any available funding that you could reallocate to something like this.
So I know, one of the MLK, I think we said would have to be done in conjunction with the redevelopment mixed use project that's taking place down there. What is the total list of items on here that are definitively not going to be startable, in this fiscal year, in the next 5 months, give or take?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think a lot of, one of those, item number 4, that is, I'm sorry, it's not item number 5, because that's in conjunction with the complete street project, which is to occur in 2023. Some of these are design costs or survey costs to get underway with the work. So the actual physical construction won't happen until the design's done.
Would you say Ocean Avenue Bridge is something that might take longer than this fiscal year?
Yes, it would. Now, there's 2 parts to that. There's the upper portion, which is the existing lighting,
Right.
and there's a lower portion. And the lower portion, I think after we would need some further discussion, because it's a site that has many fixtures, but it's not usable in this current state. And I'm not sure if the city and the CRA would really want to activate that, because it really goes to nowhere. It's a plaza that really doesn't have an activation purpose there. And for SEPTED standards, if it's not activated, it can, it could be problematic for the city with a space like that.
Thank you. So
if you could go to attachment 2, that has all visuals of some of the corresponding projects, Alan.
Thank you. So I guess the summary of my position on this, we have the 445, if we're gonna do these lighting projects, I have no problem trying to fund them all. And if there's a timeline based on our ability to literally do the work, then I would prioritize everything that could be started as soon as possible. And then if just the bridge, for instance, in MLK right there, you're talking about 300 grand, give or take, which puts us well under budget. So whether it's through the existing funds, potential additional unspent funds this fiscal year, or items that wouldn't start till next fiscal year anyway, I don't think that the cost is that large over what we have allocated that we can't support doing all of these and just assembling them in a timeline that makes sense logistically.
So I think what Board Member Katz is that we'd like to, I guess, get a motion to approve in that whatever funding is needed in next fiscal year, we allocate that so that we can move forward with these lightings, because we feel that these lightings are going to add a lot of value to the CRA district. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And we will try to make it work and get it underway. So if there's money needed, we'll be back to the board.
Yes, Board Member Hay.
I would have no problem with Board Member Katz's suggestion, as long as it doesn't jeopardize some items that are on the agenda tonight. In terms of one in particular, the Sarah Simmons project. So I would not have a problem with moving ahead, but I don't want that at the expense of what's on the agenda tonight.
All right, thank you. And Michael, I know that I asked to see about lights at certain parks, whether it's the Galaxy's baseball park, the Denton Pool, or the Palmetto Linear Park, or Palmetto Park in the city. And you mentioned to me that they are part of the city's CIP program. So if you could get me that information of the city's CIP program, so when we have an anticipated date that they're going to be, the city's completing that. For the board's information from Michael was that the CRA cannot spend money on anything that is in the city's capital improvement plan, and that is 3 years or less out. So anything that the city is planning to do in 2024 or earlier, the CRA cannot fund.
I'll get that information to you and all the board members, Board Chair.
Thank you.
CIP.
If I may also, Board Chair, could I get direction from the board to work with the legal counsel to bring back an ILA for funding so that we could be able to channel the money to the city for these projects?
So moved.
Second.
All right.
We'll bring that back next week.
We have two firsts, 2 seconds. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business, project update on Azure Equities, the selection proposer for the RFQ for the Cottage District Infill Housing Redevelopment Project.
Yes, sir, Board Chair and board members. This item is being brought to you as an update of activities that have occurred since the board's decision at your April 13th meeting, when you moved to select Azure Equities LLC as the new replacement, or let's say the newly ranked, moved up company under the Cottage District Infill Housing Redevelopment Project RFQ. We have had 2 very successful meetings with Frank Gotzman and his team. They are displaying a great deal of expertise and efficiency in what they're doing here, and how they're meeting with CRA staff and with city staff. We met as a CRA staff with Azure on April 22nd. We met again with a kind of a skeleton crew of city planning and development staff on April 29th. And from that meeting, Azure has already put together just some adjustments to try to meet some of the expectations that the city staff had wanted them to explore. And he is very anxious and excited to get started. I am working on a development agreement currently with legal counsel to present to you at the June meeting. This project will involve replatting of all of the existing lots into the future lots that it will be laid out at that site plan. So this project, let's say instead of an infill housing project where we have a vacant piece of property that was a house and we're just going to rebuild a house, it's a very simple and very streamlined from a time standpoint process. This project with the replat element added to it and the kind of subdividing of what's existing and creating all new PCN numbers and new addresses along with the roadways and the public improvements as the first step, as opposed to just a regular site plan. This will add, another probably 2 to 3 months on the regular 4 to 5 month site plan process, but it is all absolutely necessary to be done. And again, very excited. I'm very excited to have this get going. And I feel good at this point that we have a very enthused and I guess we have a partner that's willing to work with us in everything that we need, and we're being responsive to their requests for information too. So again, we'll try to have the purchase and development agreement for your consideration of key terms at the June meeting. They will most likely have any revision to the site plan that was presented to you in their RFQ response. If there's any adjustments to those that the city can support, that will also be presented and become part of that development agreement. So I believe we're on track to be able to accomplish both of those things for the June meeting. So that was it, just an update. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I did have some questions. One of the things that we saw with our first selection, Boynton Beach Cottage District Development, the city asked them really to redesign their whole site plan. I'd like to see, working with this board, to explore any changes to our comprehensive plan that needed to be done so that this project is the best that it can be. You mentioned to me at our meeting that the townhomes on Northeast 5th Avenue or Northeast 4th Avenue aren't able to back out of their garage or into the road. And to me, that's something that if the CRA can say to the city, we really think you should make these changes into the land development regulations so that we can get the best project for this infill block for single family homes. I think that's something that we need to do because this isn't the only one. We understand that Palm Beach County Housing Authority is auctioning their properties, and so we'll hopefully have more options of this infill development. And it's, with Azure Equities working with us and understanding the time and effort needed, I want to make sure that if our partner thinks that the city's land development regulations could be changed or any recommendations to them, that they bring that forward through you to us so that we can get the best project available. So I'll ask the board if they kind of agree with that. Or yes, board member Katz.
I have no problem inquiring with the city, and I'm not sure what the root of that particular regulation is, but a lot of times I think I've seen examples where it was about aesthetics and having a garage on the front of the house and in that manner. Basically, I've seen examples where the garages have been designed just like we try to hide our multi-level garages, attached to our big apartment complexes. If the concern is the aesthetic of it, that's something that can easily be done with design, but I don't have a problem with garages fronting the streets, and I think it's something that could be worked on.
Yeah, thank you. Chair.
Is the concern that the request by the city could become so cumbersome as to make the project financially not feasible?
That's always a concern as well, because then in order for it to be financially feasible, the CRA would need to put in additional funds to have a developer, because otherwise, if we want houses, then we would have to be the developer and hire a contractor, architect, engineer. And that's definitely a concern. So, this is why we select the partner to work with us. And I'm glad we're moving forward. And that's absolutely a concern of mine, because, the question is that, are we more concerned with the residents having a good experience in their backyard, or making sure that their front yard looks good for the people driving by? So I think that's kind of important, because being a homeowner, it's like, I prefer the backyard of hanging out than the front yard.
All right. I'll support
Thank you, Board. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to converse with you about things like this that come up during the process. So thank you very much for your support.
Chair.
Yes.
I have an entirely different line of concern,
Okay.
and it is by no means specific to this particular developer, but for any development project. Learning from the past, now we all really have to ask, what exactly is the plan to finance this project? And I'm not sure if the applicant is here and can speak on that, or if they're not, then that's something that staff can incorporate into their conversation. What exactly are their contingencies? What happens if they lose financing? Do they have another partner on the table? So I'd like to know the answers to these questions, because if we move forward, I do want to make sure that this is successful and that these contingencies are prepared for. The other part of that question is, how then do we verify these financing? What exactly is the process that goes to verifying these documents and this information? And what's interesting about this particular developer is one of their funding sources is, I'm not sure if it's a bank. I suppose it's a bank, but it's a foreign bank. Nothing wrong with that per se, but that is another layer of complication that requires further verification. So, just to reiterate, I'd like to know what the plan is and what their contingencies are for financing, so the project can actually go through to completion. And number two, I'd like to know what our process is in verifying these items.
All right. I think that those are important questions, because we want to make sure that the developer has the capability and the capacity to build the project. To answer, I think, one of your questions in the fiscal impact, the CRA has $385,825 to assist the developer, if need be, to get below market rate housing. Because it's another thing if we were saying, hey, we'll just build market rate housing, then I think the developer wouldn't have an issue. So because we're asking for a lower than market rate housing, that's where the CRA has to make up the difference.
Absolutely.
And as for the financial aspect, I think that's the next step, because we want to make sure that we can move forward with the design first, because if we can't get a design, there's no point of verifying the finances.
No, I completely understand, but I just want to make sure that that is a part of the conversation as early on as possible.
And I believe, Catherine, if I'm correct, we can set certain dates in regards to the financing. So if the financing doesn't happen, for example, getting the construction loan, paying for the permits, moving forward, then we can have recourse available to us. So that's kind of where, until we get the purchase and sale agreement, it's still just talks.
Yes. And that recourse is also an important part of the conversation.
Absolutely. And is there any other questions from the board regarding the cottage district? Seeing none. Michael, do you have any other questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have discussion and consideration of lease terms with Sea Life Seafood Inc. for the CRA-owned property located at 401-407 East Boynton Beach Boulevard.
Yes, sir. Board Chair and board members, this item is being brought back to you at your direction based on the conversation and discussion that occurred at your meeting on April 13th with Mr. Tim Collins of the Sea Life Seafood Inc. You may remember that Mr. Collins was selected as the top submission of a letter of intent to lease the property located at 401-407 East Boynton Beach Boulevard. We went through some basic terms and a little bit of a discussion with regard to what Mr. Collins was proposing in his letter of interest, which we do have as attachment 2. And we took those items and we turned them into a draft lease agreement. And we presented Mr. Collins with the draft lease agreement, which is attachment 3. And then in attachment 4, Mr. Collins was able to provide us with some comments and some concerns on particular sections of the lease agreement, which we've included again as attachment 4. Mr. Collins has met with the city and an architect, Steve Myatt, a local Boynton Beach architect. They did meet in really shortly after, like April 20th, I believe. CRA staff wasn't present, and there are some things that Mr. Collins and his architect will have to address. We aren't into the details of that quite yet. So this evening, the item before you really is if Mr. Collins is here to perhaps discuss some of the issues that he may have with the draft lease agreement, which is the CRA's, if we have one, a standard lease agreement, and the various paragraphs that involve perhaps a negotiable item. We can discuss, here present staff doesn't have the authority to negotiate that for you. So it's something that we had to bring to you for your attention.
So for the board, what I'd like to do is for us to hear from the applicant, Mr. Collins, and then go through the list and provide consensus to the staff so we can move forward with a lease agreement for next month. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
All right, so mind to give us a little brief overview, and then we'll go through your questions and the staff's response.
Yeah, and actually, I've been back through this a couple times, and some of these items, after reading the responses, aren't really necessary to be negotiated.
Okay.
Because their answers are sufficient.
Okay.
But the top line, number 2B, with the 5% annual increase.
Hold on one second, then Alan, can you please pull up the summary of letters of forget which, Michael, which one?
Attachment 4. It's attachment 4, Alan.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
So yeah, the original intention of the way I proposed the letter of intent on this was to make it as temporary as possible situation for the city and us to work together in the event of a bigger development comes along that we get out of the way. That's why we set the letter of intent up the way we did. There's a couple things in here, like if we start off the 5% annual increase on the rent, that wasn't anywhere near in part of the letter of intent. And I'm not sure if that's, going along with the cost of living increase, but if you average the last 5 years of cost of living increase, it kind of averages out to 1.2%. And over the life, if we're there for the full 10 years, our rent will increase, it'll go up almost double, it'll go up 50%.
Okay.
And so that's something I'd like to
So do you have a counter offer for us?
I mean, if we could do something closer to the cost of living average, say 1.5% or something, that would be acceptable. Or what do you, that's why we're here to.
If it's 1.5, I'd rather round it up to 2. But that's to the board to agree or not agree.
Well, yeah, okay. If we can, let's. I'm willing to work with 2.
And so is the board okay with that?
Sure, should we let him finish?
Yes. Yeah, because the next item is probably more important.
You want to do, okay, so let's,
yeah.
So Michael, you're writing his answers down?
Yes, sir, I am. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the rent that we proposed was a total rent plus sales taxes. And this has become a triple net lease, which puts me responsible for the property taxes and the insurance on the building, which could increase the rent by close to $2,000 a month. When you look at and I'm not sure if the city even pays sales tax on their own properties. I mean, property taxes on their own property or not. So I'm not sure how this really works.
So I believe the CRA does pay the property tax at the marina, even though we own it because it's a commercial location.
Okay.
And
Sure.
That's correct, Board Chair.
It's a commercial lease. We are no longer protected by the designation of the CRA. We then, the property is looked at as a commercial property, and the property appraiser assesses it accordingly.
Well, I guess
we lose that protection.
Do we know what the current assessment, or what we're looking at as far as?
So yeah, looking at the marina, they value it, or one portion of the marina is 1.1 million, but there's a certain exemption amount that is given. So we really don't know what the taxes are going to be.
Okay.
And so what we could do is to say, you know, I'm looking at it, what it was before, and it was roughly around $15,000 to $16,000 in taxes before it was sold for $900,000.
Okay.
Because you're getting the whole area, not just the building on the left,
okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
See, there's an empty dirt lot to the north of it that's going to have to be made into a parking lot.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how that's going to affect the taxes as well.
Correct, and the tearing down of the other buildings is also going to affect the taxes as the improvement value. And so the way that I see it to move forward, and just off the top of my head, we'll see what the board says, is that, you know, taxes not to exceed $1,000 a month.
Yeah, I'd rather just get to a flat fee, just a number that we all agree to, rather than something that's going to be, that we can't even foresee.
And so the issue is that the CRA would end up having to pay any additional taxes out of the lease, out of the rental. So instead of it being $2,500 because it's a triple net lease, it would be $2,500 for the space, $1,000 a month for the taxes, and then whatever it is for the insurance.
Right, which is also an unknown of what the property insurance is going to end up being.
Well, you know, hopefully you would get that number. We would get the number before signing the lease. So.
Yeah, because I'd like to get it signed, get this thing completed as quickly as possible.
So is that something that, Michael, does this make sense?
Yes, sir. I wanted to let you and Mr. Collins know, and the board, that we are not leasing the entire 4 addresses to Mr. Collins. We are working with 2 properties, which is the 401 and the 407 property. And those 2 properties together, currently on the Palm Beach County Property Appraiser, is paying for the 401 about $4,800 a year in taxes, and $2,784 for the lot in between the buildings. So that's a total of about $7,500, $7,600 divided by 12 is $632 a month. I don't anticipate that our lease and the terms of our lease would I guess, be so exorbitant that I could see them increasing the value of that lease. This is a nominal lease agreement. It's not generating a tremendous amount of value overall. So they're going to look at the lease agreement as well as other leases and the property. So I just would have a hard time believing that they would increase that for this particular use, you know. But as of right now, that's what it would be a month.
Okay.
So the agreement, I think. Sorry.
So, you know, basically based upon the number I just said, which was the other properties as well, I would put it as half, so that, you know, you would not pay more than $500 in property tax if the property appraiser says.
Right. And then if we could get to where we have just a flat number that covers the taxes and the insurance, that would be great.
And so
So that way we're paying $1 amount and then tax on top of that. That's what that would be the most ultimate, the end game for me would be,
and
whatever it is, it is.
So Michael, it's in the sense is that we have year-to-year leases. So if it gets to a point where I don't think we're going to be losing money renting it out. However, we have the ability to not move forward after the first year. The whole point is just to set the lease for at least the first year, so that there's a fixed cost rather than a variable cost.
Yes, sir. Well, once we know whether the board was supporting a triple net or not, now we can work toward getting those specific numbers more nailed down. But you said a $500 number for taxes, but as it is existing right now, it's about $132 short of the existing taxes for those two. So your first thought was, as long as it's not more than 1,000, then he'll be capped there. But then we talked about 500, which is less than the taxes that are collected. So
saying is that means the CRA would not be profiting $2,500 a month. They would be profiting the $2,360. Whatever's.
I understand. Okay, I understand.
That's kind of where I understand the triple lease means that the tenant pays for the rent, the taxes, and the insurance. We're kind of doing a modified where we're putting the cap on the first year, where we can put it into the second year lease if we so inclined to move forward with the second year lease to be the actual property taxes, because we'll have an understanding of what those property taxes will be for 2022, because we don't know what the property taxes are for 2021 right now.
Yes, sir. Absolutely correct. Thank you. That makes sense.
So Board Member Katz, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with setting a fixed amount in the first year, but I don't want to personally, granted I will not be here 1 year from now, but if I was, I would not want to have to renegotiate it. Like, if I would be willing to support a capped rate on the first year, but a percentage rate for the duration. That way it's done with, and the first year limits the exposure in the second through 10th year. If it's 50%, because the property being leased is 50%, whatever the ratio is, then the percent is what is owed versus a fixed amount beyond the first year, because then that means that the CRA does have to cover the difference. And at that point, we're subsidizing the rent basically.
So I agree with you. So it's because we don't know the property taxes for 2021, where we know that the property appraiser is limited to increasing the assessed rate 10% each year. Mr. Collins, would you be okay with the flat rate for the first year, and then the full triple net lease for the second year?
Well, as I heard Board Member Katz state something around about 50%.
I don't know what that meant.
I was just
wanted to be
throwing up
clear
a
on that
percentage
too.
number. Whatever percentage of the property you are literally leasing.
So there's 3 properties, and so he's only getting 2 of them, not the third one.
Right. So the value of the 2 being leased.
Right. So it's 100% of the 2 properties.
Yeah. I did say I wanted to make sure I was clear on what we were talking about.
Thank you for helping me clarify.
Okay, so we got through the first 2 items where there's been and these are just offers. There's no agreement because it has to go through a vote to the board.
I got you.
Board Chair,
yes.
I would just like to summarize to make sure that everyone is very clear on what was just decided. So for the first year, it would essentially be not a triple net lease, just a capped rate, normal lease, one solid amount per year. Beginning in the second year, we'll switch to an ordinary triple net lease.
That is correct.
And that is just what we discussed. There's still the rest of the board would need to weigh in for that to.
Correct.
So then
we're discussing the same thing. Thank you.
And moving forward, we would be adding that number on top of the $2,500 monthly number?
Correct.
Okay. Then does, oh, okay. But we can work with that. So that pretty much takes us down to, well, and then when we get to a set number, we want it with the taxes and the insurance and all of that when we get a number.
So,
Yeah.
we pay for insurance.
I know, I got it. Yeah.
So we'll have the number before the lease is signed.
Right.
Okay. Is that correct, Michael?
Yes, of course. Yes, sir. It will be spelled out as what the monthly rent would be, absolutely.
Where the
With
monthly.
all inclusive.
Yep. Perfect.
I think this might be a good opportunity, since we're on the rent amount, to discuss the item regarding how much we've been talking about 2,500. Mr. Collins requested in his letter of interest or intent to lease that the board provide him with the grants that are available to the general public or commercial, eligible commercial businesses, which would include half of the rent for the first 12 months of the 18 months of a lease, for a multi-year lease. So are you all, that was not agreed to, that was what was proposed. Are you in agreement to reduce the first year's rent by half? Or are you all agreeing that the 2,500 is the rent for the first year and those grants would not apply? The grant for rent, not any other grant at this moment, but the grant for rent.
Well, if I can speak to that, yeah, if I can speak, I'm okay with waiving that in the first year, as long as we can set the start date for rent ahead, probably 90 days or so, that it's going to take us to actually be open and generating cash flow.
So, but even if, so we give you the 90 days and you don't have a CO, you would still be required to pay the rent.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to, yeah, obviously, we're going to have to put it, yes.
Okay, so the new offer is to not take the commercial grant for rent reimbursement, but the CRA would provide out of the first year 3 free months, and to have the rent start date 3 months after the lease agreement is signed. And then that goes to the second question to the board of, do we want to allow the 50,000 or up to 50,000 for commercial improvement grant to that building?
Chair.
Yes.
I do hesitate on that point, only because, the purpose of this building was only to be a temporary home. And so any major investments into the space, it's just going to be torn down.
Got it.
So I don't think it's in the best interest of the CRA to proceed in that direction. We've already agreed to these other offers. So.
And we're not looking, I don't think we're going to need, I think we can, not even look at that, the interior renovation or the renovation of the building. Look, it's a mortar. I mean, the place is solid cement. The roof is double I-beam cement. The only real question, even if there's a hurricane, would be the front glass on Boynton Beach Boulevard, which we'll have shutters for. I'm not terribly worried about it. There's really nothing to catch fire except for interior wall space, and we're not doing anything in there that's going to require that. So I'm okay with that point, with the 50,000. What I would like, I believe you have an exterior paint and sign. Are those grants still available?
That is the grant.
So I believe we combined the exterior and the interior grants.
Okay.
So if you're saying that you'd like assistance with the parking lot, landscaping.
Yeah, well, the parking lot, we're definitely going to have to address, because the parking lot doesn't, we didn't even get there and it wasn't addressed in the lease.
Okay.
In the meeting that we had with the city, what we did come up with was, whether I lease the building or anybody else, leases the building, the current parking isn't going to work. And building that parking lot, you and I had an actual conversation about it. We're going to have to, I don't know where, how we're going to put that. That's building that parking lot is going to be a couple $100,000, $150,000 or $200,000.
To build out the parking
lot? I
lot?
would think so. I mean, you got to deal with the drainage and the landscaping and the whole 9 yards. It's not, I mean, you built one. How much was the parking lot at the AmeriGas
we didn't
building?
We didn't build that parking lot.
Well, it was part of a grant, I believe, when they built that.
I mean, the parking lot that we just built was part of the Tearing Down United Congregation Church, the temporary library. So, Twee, do you have that number? How much, not the tear down, but how much did that parking lot cost?
The parking lot, all total, probably about 100,000, but that is, again, that is just the paving and dealing with the existing condition, because they're not required. Those are just public spaces. We don't have the landscape islands and things like that, as if it's a retail parking lot. Because of Mr. Collins' changing use, that necessitated everything to be looked at differently, and for safer ingress, egress out of a major arterial road.
So this may
Far off 150.
Yeah. So it's probably going to be around that much, yes.
And so the question is that if the CRA doesn't lease it, what is the plan? To tear down all the buildings and put up a parking lot or a sod?
We were leaving the 401 and we were going to explore perhaps pop-up business opportunities which would lessen the requirements from the city. In the areas where the buildings, those two other buildings are being taken down, they'll be sodded. So you'll have the 401 building and then sod all the way across. Perhaps you could do a food truck there, you could do an art show there, but that, of course, we had not had an opportunity at all to discuss what the city would allow us to do. But the intent, obviously, after any demolition is to resod and landscape the property so that it is more visually appealing than it is now.
Versus what we did for the temporary library of expanding that parking lot.
Right.
So I think that.
Well, if I may,
Yes.
in the meeting that we had with the Planning and Zoning Board, the building is 2,062 square feet. And by code, there's 11 parking spaces required for whatever that goes in there. And there is not 11 parking spaces that meet the Florida DOT codes, that meet any of the codes. So in order to put anything in there, some form of a parking lot's going to have to be built, no matter who goes in there.
So I mean, that's the problem that we're having now, is that if the CRA board wants to use that building as for the future, a parking lot is going to have to be built. And then the question is that how much money does the CRA want to spend? The way that I see it is that, you know, I spoke to the owners of the laundromat, and they're looking to, you know, to be there. They have a long-term tenant to be there for another 7 years or so. And that we really need to figure out, I guess, as the landlord, how do we rent out that space with the parking associated with it, and determine those costs. Because I don't think that, like what you said, you know, if we're, you know, the CRA is required to spend the money for the parking lot, we don't know if that's going to be 90 days. We don't know if we need to wait till October 1st for for next year's financing. I'm going to open it up to the board to see what their comments regarding a parking lot.
Yeah, if I can make one last comment as well. As me being a temporary tenant willing to get out of the way of any future development, the invest in the money in building the parking lot we're talking about, you know, there's very little chance that we'll ever recoup all the money in 1 or 2 or 3 years to ever be in the black.
I think this was a fairly obvious situation going into the discussion for the board's recollection and for the public. The CRA board did not issue an RFP or put a sign up to rent the building. We received unsolicited interest from various potential uses, some of which are the existing use, which would not require some of the things that a change in use, such as what is being proposed, requires different things than if it was another rental business, let's say. So there are other factors at play here besides the fact that, you know, yes, someone will have to build the parking lot. Someone will have to change the ADA bathroom requirements. Someone will have to add lighting. Someone will have to upgrade the electric. Someone will have to do a lot of things, but that wasn't what the CRA posed to anyone. It was posed to us that we had this building and someone wants to rent it, which turned into 5 people wanting to rent it. And I don't know if the other renters or potential renters would stand up now at this point and say, oh, I really wasn't expecting to pay for some of the things that is required to be there, but I really want to rent it. So I just want to remind the board that you're not in a position where you are soliciting a tenant and you promised to do something or thought about doing something. All of this was proposed to you, and that in a very skeleton way. So I just want to, no disrespect to this current, to Mr. Collins, but I work for you and you work for the agency and represent the agency. So I just want to remind you that there was no presupposed circumstances or financial assistance that you had offered the public to then take advantage of. This was simply someone saying, hey, I see this building, I want to rent it, I'll make it really easy for you. And then other people said, oh, well, I want to do that too. And you had made no stipulation to anyone in the public notice or on the dais that said, we will provide X, Y, and Z. So just want to let you know.
All right, appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Board Member Katz.
Yeah, I mean, all of this does raise viability concerns about changing the use and having to do all that. I agree that it shouldn't be the tenant's responsibility to bring the property up to code, as it wouldn't be a tenant's responsibility that rented, any other commercial property to have to build a parking lot. So this conversation does give me pause, because if we do plan to tear it down in 1 or 2 years, would it be worthwhile to spend $100,000 or $200,000 fixing it up? I think the answer to that is probably no. So again, given all these, I'm going to call them revelations, but again, as Mike Simon pointed out, these were probably concerns that staff had relative to advertising it and changing the use. It definitely gives me pause.
Well, I have it.
So I'm going to, excuse me, Mr. Collins.
Yeah.
I want to ask the rest of the board if they have any other comments before we move forward with your response.
I guess I would like to ask Mike, did I hear you say you had other potential tenants for those other buildings?
Yep. Well, they were all presented last month for the 401 building. And there was, I believe, if it's still part of the item. No, I didn't include all of the other letters of interest that they, oh yeah, there's a summary. No, let's see, item number. Yes, item number 5, I believe, or 6. Let's see. So yeah. Sorry.
So why not? I mean, we're talking about. Are we talking like 2,062 square feet for the entire parking for those 400 plus buildings? And if that's the case, what's the cost of just doing it for that whole complex there? And because you're really going to get some tenants. I feel you know better than I do, but if you're going to get some tenants, that would be cost effective to go ahead and take care of it now rather than waiting later and having that cost at that time.
Yeah, so based upon the letters of intent, there was a proposed use for equipment rental, which would not require a change of use. Is that correct, Michael?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
If I may say something to that.
I'll ask Board Member Romulus, did you have any other comments?
Sure, at this time, no, I'm just listening to this conversation, and I would simply just echo Board Member Katz's. I definitely was in support of this, but I'm just, having a little bit of just pause at this time, just kind of realizing all the things that are, entailed with this particular lease. So just trying to hear it out and see if we can work something, make something work.
Okay. And yes, Mr. Collins, your opportunity.
In the planning meeting, in the planning meeting that we had, it was with all the departments, the fire, everybody was there. And the wording that I heard that came out, that as soon as the businesses ceased to be in existence, all of those businesses moved out and they're no longer in existence, the new codes are in place.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't matter who goes in there, that's going to be required to be code. Because there is no existing business there anymore.
Okay.
So that's so what I'm saying is, even if it's, whether it's me or it's the equipment rental place, it's empty. It's no longer an equipment rental place. That's what I heard in that meeting.
Okay. So the issue that we have is that, yeah, the CRA has to decide after spending the $900,000 to purchase it, what is the best use for the CRA district moving forward. And let me finish in the sense that, do we want to sod it up and wait for someone, and use it as land banking? Or do we feel that there is going to be more than 5 years before a developer comes and tries to develop that whole block? From my information, I believe that there's going to be a greater than 5 years before that a developer or the property owners want to decide to sell. And that's the discussion that we need to have, is because it's the CRA's cost based upon what you're saying, that, to make it up to code for the parking lot, for the ADA bathrooms, for the ADA ingress and egress, there's a lot of costs associated with that. And we don't have any of that. And so, like we mentioned, the exterior grant, I think before, was 25,000, and I don't think it's going to be enough.
In all reality, it's paint right now for me. That's not that much of a big. I think the exterior doesn't really, doesn't come into play really.
It's the parking lot's part of the exterior.
The parking lot's really, oh, okay.
Because that's on the outside.
All right.
And plus all the landscaping and everything else is all exterior. It's not just paint.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that either somebody needs to get us that information before we move forward with any sort of lease agreement, because we already got through a good amount of the discussion of what the cost would be to you, but now it's the cost to the CRA, and it doesn't, at, what is it, $2,500 a month. If it's costing us $50,000, that's 20 months.
Okay. And chances are, you said yourself that the laundromat's got a 7-year lease.
That was just from my recollection.
That's 74 months. So now we got 54 months of positive cash flow.
So that's something where it's also bringing other people to Boynton Beach Boulevard,
right,
and other activities. If there's a big enough parking lot, you can have a food truck and other things like that. Mentioned what the CRA had, different pop-up events there associated with you. So I'm going to let the Vice Mayor speak.
I do have a food truck.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Collins, I have a brief question for you, and then I'll make some comments. So it sounds like the sticking point now is about this parking lot that you supposedly have to build. Is that the greatest expenditure that's being asked of you? Is this the real sticking point?
No. I mean, I'm going to have, by the time I put equipment in there, and
I mean by the city.
I got you. That and the couple items that weren't really addressed in the beginning with the 5% increase, which we've settled on too, and the taxes and insurance on that, rather than just having a flat figure.
But in terms of what the city is asking of you to meet.
This parking lot is because I'm going to have 100.
How many are there now, and how many needs to be there?
What's that?
How many parking spaces are there now, and how many needs to be there?
Well, right now, if we were allowed to use the existing parking across, all the way across in front of where the buildings are being torn down, I'd have to count them, but it's pretty close, but that doesn't meet the code.
You can't
Because
count
you're
them.
not, the
Okay.
Florida Department of Transportation doesn't want people backing out onto a state highway, a state road. But yeah, there's pretty close to 11 spaces across the whole front of that property.
So theoretically, if you were given the right to use it,
Mhm.
problem solved. More or less problem, or less.
It would have to be, that would have to be a discussion with the city.
I see a head nodding no from staff. Staff, could you weigh in? I'm trying to
No.
understand.
No, Vice Chair, that's not, I believe that the CRA board at this point is, the decisions are, do you want to turn this into a rental property and what's involved in doing that? And if you want to turn it into a rental property, who is responsible for the improvements to that rental property? And there are emails flying into my email now from people who are already, we've got back to this bidding thing again, where people are saying, well, you know, I'm listening to the meeting and I'm hearing what's being discussed, and I want to say what I would do in this particular case. So what I'm concerned about is that we if we want to invest as a owner of the property and turn it into a real commercial leasing building.
Question to the board. The question to the board is that what are we willing to spend to make this project move forward? And
Yes,
the
sir.
answer, we don't know, because we don't have any of the costs. And so what I would suggest is that because we have selected an applicant to move forward,
Yes,
that our applicant provides us with the costs to build it, make it up to code. And then we can make that determination.
Got it. And
Sounds
on the
Yes,
other
sir.
side,
That's what we would like.
when I put our letter of intent in, it was looking at a building with a fence in front of an empty dirt lot and the parking spaces across the front. When we proposed, that number, we didn't realize it was going to be a gorgeous new building with a gorgeous new parking lot. So there's concessions to be made on both sides here.
So correct. But until we get that information of the cost to put it up to code, because it's not just for your retail business, it's any retail business, according to you. And so
that's what was very
and so I think
adamant in the meeting.
What I'll ask the board for consensus is that we request the applicant to provide us with the costs to the property in order to move it forward. And, that includes any of the ADA requirements inside the building, but it doesn't include any of your costs for equipment or any, and I think that's something that we've come a little bit far with the discussion of the lease. But until we get the ask from you of what you need the CRA to do, we can't really move forward discussing the rest of the lease.
I got it.
Chair, I'm not opposed to hearing out, this information, but as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm a little bit cautious about spending money on something that we're going to tear down in a few years. But we'll have that discussion once we have more information, but just wanted you to be aware that that is my concern.
And then, unless there's some sort of a form of exceptions to be granted towards, the parking, changing the parking or something along, which I don't believe there's anything that we can do around that, because then it opens up a can of worms around the whole city.
There's a reason why the CRA tore down the temporary library, because we couldn't make it anything but a temporary structure. And so that's where you're not making this a temporary structure. And so we need to know the information of the costs to be your landlord.
Okay.
And I'll ask if we're all in consensus.
And
if
it comes down to it, and that another tenant on that block is every intention of being there for 7 years or whatever it is.
We don't have that information.
I understand, but that you made a statement that you spoke to the laundromat people, and they have a long-term lease and that should last at least another 7 years. if we wanted to make something in a different,
But
we wanted to
but
rewrite the lease for
it's
that.
irrelevant
fine.
because it has no bearing
I
on
get it.
them making their own decisions.
I know. It just is one of those things where it's, what I'm getting at is I'm willing to put it to a longer term situation that matches up with whatever works best for the city. I wasn't like,
Okay, thank you.
you know what I mean? That's where I was getting at.
Also,
So,
or we would recommend entering into the lease agreement without this other information that you're requesting now. So we were really focused on those terms, like you said, that these other types of things, we wouldn't want to enter into a legal binding agreement without knowing that the city, has approved essentially what he's doing or whoever that is and the costs and all of that. So, these are very prudent details to go through before entering into the lease. Absolutely.
Absolutely. 100%. I agree with Mr. Simon. The only other item all the way down here is that when we would be a right of first refusal, we'd like to have added to buy the property. If somebody made an offer, if it wasn't for the whole block, if somebody came in and just wanted to buy those 3 lots, we just like the opportunity to match the offer.
and if someone wants to just buy those 3 lots while you're the tenant, I don't see that we oppose that because it's just those 3 areas, but hopefully, it's part of a bigger project.
That's what I'm getting at. That's all I meant. I mean, like I said, if it was somebody buying the whole thing to do a big project, then we'd say, and we could make the wording out that way.
Right. But, I would say that instead of first refusal, it would be the CRA's cost, nothing less than the CRA's cost. So like, for example, if, a future CRA wants to sell it. No, I don't think we have that ability.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll ask the board member Katz, do you have any comment?
I would just say that, at least for me, the whole purpose of buying this was to ensure that it was part of an assemblage that would take place at a date to be determined later by the market. So I would not be in favor of allowing any sort of release or sale of the property, because then we would no longer have any ability to ensure that it was part of an assemblage.
The issue is that we're not necessarily going to be part of the CRA board in the future, and for the tenant not to have the ability to match whatever someone else is for just these 3 parcels doesn't necessarily make much sense, unless the person that are buying these parcels from the CRA or, that, because what ends up happening if the CRA is giving it away as part of a bigger parcel, we don't want to give you the right of refusal of nothing.
Yeah, no.
So
it'll be publicly noticed as well. So anyone would have an opportunity to make an offer to the CRA when we go to dispose of it.
So thank you, Michael. Because we're not a private landlord, we're a public entity. We cannot sell it without giving you the option to buy it.
So it's unnecessary.
Oh, it's not, okay. Yeah, because we've already gone through the 30-day public notice period on that.
No. So if we by sale, we would have to go through another 30-day or RFP, RFQ.
Oh, perfect.
So thank you, Michael.
Yeah, not a problem. I just know what went on with, in the past with the building up at 1101 on the north end.
Right.
And I just, if something came through like that, I'd want to be able to match an offer like that.
Right.
That's what was my thinking of was on the right of first refusal.
And the CRA board has that ability to accept or decline.
Got it. All right, so it wouldn't be necessary is what I'm
Okay.
Because you'll have the option anyways.
Okay.
Upon public notice.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Yeah.
Chair?
Yes.
Could we have legal or someone from the staff just summarize everything? Make sure everything's clear, we're on the same page.
So from what I understand, we've taken notes on the directions the board has given for the lease item so far, but at this point, the discussion of the actual lease terms is on hold until the applicant returns with an assessment of the costs it would take to bring the property up to code. The CRA will then analyze that and determine if it wishes to move forward with the lease discussion at a future meeting.
Correct. And so that's kind of where the other terms that haven't been agreed upon yet, but have been discussed, is a 2% increase in the rent, a flat fee of $500 for the first year of, for the 2021 year's rent. Because, you know, if the CRA owns it for 4 or 5 months, that means we're not paying the tax on it before we lease it to you. And the next thing is that into the year 2022, it would be the triple net lease.
So if I understand, Board Chair, your direction, it would be when the applicant comes back with his assessment of the cost, the CRA staff and legal would also present to you a lease tentatively revised with what had been discussed tonight for the board's consideration at that time.
Correct. It is another draft lease.
If there's a third person on the board to consent to those
Yes.
modifications.
I consent.
Would the CRA also bring their estimates for their insurance for the property and other things of that nature? Will they have their, so at the next meeting, because I can have some of the costs for what you asked for me before the June meeting.
So
I guess what I'm asking for is like a proposal of what the insurance is going to be, so we can kind of get an unround number of what we're looking at from both sides.
And so, is that something we can do? All right.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Is there any other?
No.
Okay.
You just, I'll be back and I'll have the numbers.
All right. Perfect.
And if I have them ahead of time, so say I have some of this stuff ahead of time, can I just speak back and forth with Mr. Simon, and so that we get to the next meeting?
Absolutely. As soon as you get the information, you can speak to Mr. Simon, and Mr. Simon can speak to us individually. However, until we're at the meeting,
right,
we as a board cannot discuss it.
I got it. And still we don't have to waste a bunch of time going around in circles and maybe pushing it off until the July meeting. You know, if we can kind of have some of this stuff sorted out.
For example, if you get the information to Mr. Simon and would like to discuss any of that information with the board, so you understand what each of us are thinking individually, you have that ability as well.
Yeah, because by June, whatever, the June, I think it's like the 8th or whatever, by that meeting, if, you know, this is moving forward, I'd rather just come in here and like.
You would like to know where the board stands.
I want to sign the lease the next day. That's where I want to get to.
Okay.
And I'd like to know where we're going. I don't want to wait to get there to find out it's going to be another month.
It's going to be tough. I'll tell you that.
I got it.
All right.
You know, look, I've been through tough. This is 8 months of tough, so I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 15C, discussion and consideration of terms for an RFP RFQ for the CRA project located at 115 North Federal Highway. Michael, based upon our conversation, the bullet points that are in front of the commission, starting with a mixed-use project providing retail, office, grocery, and residential units. These are things that we want to include or not include so that we can finalize the requirements for the RFP RFQ draft for our final approval next month. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, sir. Thank you.
All right. And I believe that we would have comments from the public. And so does the board want to open it up to the public first and then make our comments?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to have anyone from the audience and anyone virtually, please raise your hand or ask a question to be recognized. Please state your name and address for the record.
Chair Board, my name is Jeff Burns. I'm the CEO of Affiliated Development. I had some time to just kind of go through the RFP, RFQ recommendations, and I wanted to offer up maybe a couple of proposed suggestions for the board to consider.
Thank you.
So as you probably know, we spent considerable time meeting with some of the businesses and community residents. And there was a couple things that I wanted to suggest. One of them being when it comes to the housing, and housing is actually mentioned on here, I would like the board to consider possibly incorporating some mixed income component to the housing component. One of the unique things of urban dwelling is having the teacher living next to the doctor all benefiting from the same, quality finishes and amenities. And I believe that would make this a much stronger development. Obviously, there's surrounding businesses. A lot of them are restaurants and other hospitality oriented, and they have a lot of employees that I think could benefit from living close to where they work. So that's one of the recommendations I would like to make. And if it's okay, I'll just keep going, and then you can address
Please.
them all. One of the other things I wanted to talk about is it does make mention of adjacent properties. So I think it's important that, number one, if the RFP is to incorporate adjacent properties, that the developer can demonstrate that they actually have site control or gaining site control of those surrounding properties. I think that's something that should be considered. And if the plan does call for incorporating one of the surrounding properties, potentially knocking them down, I think there should be some consideration given for trying to incorporate maybe existing businesses within the new development. Certainly don't want to be displacing any current businesses that are there and want to remain there long term. That's it for my my suggestions regarding the RFP. For the RFQ portion of things, I noticed on there it made a note at the very beginning that talks about obviously being qualified and having financing, and you hit on this a little earlier, but I think it's important to be able to provide proof of financing, both debt and equity.
Absolutely.
As part of the RFP and RFQ process is being able to demonstrate that you actually have the money to build what you say you can build. I think that's very important. Also experience. I think it's important to incorporate there being experience in other PPP similar related projects. So if you're going to propose a hotel, that you've actually completed a hotel. If you're going to propose an apartment, that you've completed an apartment project, and so on and so forth. I think that's important. That'll just ensure that the board and the CRA is getting what they bargained for, and they're going to see some action take place on the site. That's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Chair, I have a question for the speaker, if that's all right.
Yes, you may.
So, Mr. Burns, you mentioned mixed income housing. Was that the phrase that you used?
Right. And so, yes.
So my question is this: what would be your suggestion in order to achieve mixed income housing? So you have a teacher living next to a doctor. From your previous experience, how do you make that a possibility?
Yeah, well, it's incorporating different set-asides for different income levels. And so I don't think that necessarily needs to be a defined thing. In other words, in the RFP, I don't believe it needs to say there needs to be this many residents earning a certain income or paying a certain rent. But I think to incorporate a mix of incomes, meaning you got folks that are earning $30,000 a year living next to somebody who's earning $130,000 a year, and that being and typically how that's documented is within a restrictive covenant on the property that holds that set aside.
So you said earlier, not an income cap per se, but some sort of check. How would you know?
Yeah. So what generally happens is you would enter into an agreement with the CRA that says you are willing to keep X percentage of the overall dwelling units at certain income levels. And those are, and forgive me, but those are called set-asides. And so those set-asides within workforce housing are typically anywhere from 80% up to 120% of AMI. That's per state statute. And so something like that would look at 25% of the total dwelling units being set aside for income levels and rents between 80 and 120% of AMI. And then that would be documented by recording a restrictive covenant with the property. So no matter who owns it, they're going to be held to keep rents at that level to provide, obviously housing for folks in those income levels.
Thank you. And I do see Miss Kim Kelly with her hand raised. Kim, you are self-muted if you'd like to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, how are you doing tonight? Kim Kelly, owner of Hurricane Alley Raw Bar and Restaurant, located at 529 East Ocean Avenue. I do understand what Mr. Burns is saying about incorporating businesses. You know, we also have to change with the times, and I appreciate new development coming in and seeing what we want to do as well. So I think that is a really big bonus and going to be a really big help going forward. Also, as far as he's talking about like the mixed use on the residents, I understand that as well, because a lot of my customers, you know, there's some people that make 15,000 or sitting beside somebody that's a millionaire, you know, and these people like to mix and match with each other. So that's not so far off of a statement that he's making. And I do understand it if it's done correctly. I think that's something that's possible that we can move forward with. But that's just my personal opinion. We haven't really discussed this with our group for the DBC. We're kind of waiting to see where the CRA is going to take this and what we can do to help assist and better our city. So that's just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. All right. And is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please raise your hand or ask a question. We'll move on to board member comments, and we'll double check to see if we missed anybody. Board member Katz, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Chair. So I appreciate and I agree with pretty much everything that was just said by Mr. Burns. First and foremost, financing. You know, I don't know how we can strengthen what we would like to see in terms of demonstrated financing, because we have seen examples where financing has been alleged, where something has been shown and then financing has evaporated. So I don't know if there's any way to try to put more teeth into that requirement, but I'm all in favor of it to ensure that what's being proposed to us is legitimately backed by the ability to pay for it. So I don't know what staff can do to explore that, but I'm in favor of that. I like the idea. I think as a board, we talked about having mixed income set asides, and I still support that. You know, as was just mentioned by Ms. Kelly, you don't have to be a millionaire to live downtown in Boynton Beach. It's not other cities. It's a middle income city, and we have rich people that come here and live here, but a lot of people are working class, and I like that. And I think that they should have the opportunity to partake in our downtown and live there. I like the idea of some form of proof of site control for the adjacent properties if someone's going to put it in their proposal. I think that's what you were referring to, that someone couldn't just walk up and say, this is my plan for the entire block, and it includes 6 properties I don't have, and I might not have ever had a conversation that was fruitful about acquiring them. So I'm not sure what that would look like. But I do like the idea that if someone should not be putting anything into their proposal, that they don't have some sort of tentative agreement contingent on them being awarded, you know, the ability to develop the site, just so they can't kind of goose or spice their proposal with fantasies of acquiring properties they might have no chance of doing. And I have no problem. There's only a handful of existing businesses in the vicinity, and if they were to lend their property to the broader project by virtue of some sort of agreement or sale, I think it would be fair game for us to try to ensure that they could be a part of whatever the future version of this is. So I do appreciate the input, and I like everything that was stated. And I look forward to moving forward with this. We've been talking about it for some time. Even more time when you consider when we purchased this a number of years ago, and it served its purpose as a temporary library. It served its purpose as public parking, and I think that what we develop out of this process is going to serve its purpose as a plank in our downtown, and I want to get it right. And I appreciate everyone's input to this point, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak next? As for myself, per your comment, how do we keep the financing, to the developer? It's, the time is money. Whereas if financing isn't received by such amount of date, that's it. And it's, it's not necessarily just putting a loan on the property, it's getting the permit. And so that's something that, we can put in the RFP, RFQ of the certain timelines negotiated with what the developer thinks is possible. Because we don't want to, because I remember with 500 Ocean, they asked for a couple of extensions. One was in July, and then one was for an extra 2 months to February, that the CRA board was okay with because of all of the utility work that was needed for that project. As for the adjacent properties, we saw it with our MLK corridor that the applicants got options to purchase, similar to what we saw with the cottage district. So it's something that, they're private property owners, so they can choose which developer they want to work or don't want to work with. But that's something that we would definitely consider. As for myself, one of the things that is, coming more apparent is that the city of Boynton Beach does not have Class A office space in our downtown. We had 500 Ocean was the last office space that was built in that corner, and it was one business took all 6,600 square feet. We have a couple retail storefronts, and then the First Financial Plaza is an office condo, and we're grossly under land use for office space, and especially with what we are seeing with our neighbors, with Miami, West Palm, and all the way up to West Palm Beach and to Palm Beach Gardens, we're in the middle, and we can find that place to hopefully get a corporate headquarters, because we want to make sure that the property is active during the day with people coming in, not just people going out during rush hour. In order to make that work, because it is more of a risk, I want to make sure that the CRA is going to add tax incremental funding for, community benefits. I think economic activity of a commercial, more so than just retail, is a community benefit. I feel that the set-asides for properties lower than market value is a community benefit. I feel that, even though we want someone with experience, we also want to teach the next generation how to get experience. That's the tough part, is that, you can't get a job because you have no experience, and you can't get experience because you can't get a job. So that's something that I'd like to that to be a consideration of working with the local contractors or local nonprofits to help build workforce or career skill training for not just the city of Boynton Beach, but for the surrounding area. So it's not necessarily the fact that the workers have to be from the city of Boynton Beach. However, they will have a leg up because it's a shorter commute to work. And I think that, and then the last thing is the incorporation of a multimodal accommodation amenities into the project's design. This is our TOD. So, if, we can speak, have any sort of applicant speak with a mass transit operator, whether it's Tri-Rail, whether it's Brightline, whether it's Redbus, Greyhound, Palmtran, that there's some or incorporation of multimodal use into the project is important to me, because we don't want the only way to get here is by walking or driving. We want to have the mass transit option to get to our downtown. And I think that's it. And the one thing that, the reason why I want to add TIF or CRA dollars is for the community benefits, because we only have one opportunity to build this project. And that also reminds me, when we discuss mixed income, the developer does not have to be an affordable housing developer. However, if they do have experience, and they're able to help subsidize the funds through county, state, or federal dollars that are coming through with the American Rescue Plan, that's something that also I'd be interested in proceeding, because we know with the Ocean Breeze East and the MLK corridor, the Florida Housing Finance Corporation is the reason why we have that, and the CRA did not have to spend millions of dollars to get those affordable housing. So that's not necessarily an incorporation, but a consideration that I'd like to add. Michael, does staff have all those, the difference between considerations and incorporations?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I'll call on the board. Board Member Hay, would you like to add any comments?
No, you stated it well. I'd just like to see a good mix of restaurants. I want to see the office, the administrative office space, because I think working with BDB of Palm Beach County, that's one of the things that is being looked for, because office space is getting awfully tight in our entire county, and I think we have an opportunity there to generate that. But at the same time, I would love to see us get more walking space in our downtown area in terms of additional restaurants and places of activity. I love to go to Hurricane Alley in the evening, but many times it's a little crowded. And she's doing well, great food and all that. But it would be nice to have something right down the street on basically same level that we could offer. I think the input from the adjacent property owners would definitely be good. We've tried in the past, and I hope we can continue to solicit and get that input from them, so that it can be a wholesome area, because I think you just stated, I believe it was Board Chair, that we have one shot at this that's going to last for a long time, and we want to make sure that we get it right. I'm looking for input from BBC and all the other organizations to make sure that we are headed in the right direction. And just, I know time is money, but by the same token, if you don't do it right the first time, you run the risk of many years of agony. So I guess, and the parking is always a critical item for me. I don't want us to repeat what we've done in the past and parts of our city where we built these mixed use buildings and there's no place to park. It's very inconvenient. The signage is poor, and you just can't get there from here. So I think there's a lot of considerations. The income, of course, is another biggie. Not just turn it into something that we can be proud of. That's what I want. I want to brag a little bit on Boynton Beach, and we're going in that direction. But we don't want to fall off the horse at this stage or run off the track. So I think we're moving in the right direction, and I will have additional comments as we go down the road.
Thank you. You know, on a side note, I was at Butcher in the Bar today. I went to 500 Oceans parking garage to find a place to park. It's something that I'm glad to see that we have that option. So I encourage everyone to stop by 500 Ocean, try the new restaurants across the street from Hurricane Alley as well. Commissioner, Board Member Romulus, do you have any final comments?
I do. Thank you, Chair. You know, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that has been said from Board Member Katz and also from you, Chair. And, you know, for me, this is an exciting project coming through the pipeline where we have an opportunity to get another building right within our downtown. And I'm glad that we've taken a lot of time to really go through and nitpick every single aspect, because you know when we do, we usually tend to get it right. I think 500 Ocean was the start of all of this. You know, we got an opportunity to see it come out of the ground right as we came into service, and it's been doing phenomenally well. I passed by the other day and saw lots of people sitting out there in the court in front of Pio Pio, I think I'm saying it right. And it's a, you know, for me it's a huge success that that's happening. And as you mentioned with the office spaces, you know, again, that's another success. What I would add with the office spaces is simply that we allow for it to be some type of flex space as well, where if it's not taken up by one company or multiple large companies, it can be used also as some type of co-working space that would allow for multiple entrepreneurs and business owners to be able to use the space, as I do feel that that is the future of how business and office spaces are being used. A lot of people are working virtually, a lot of people are working remotely. And so, you know, I want to make sure that as we whatever design comes in for what that office space would look like, that it does give the flexibility to allow for that type of maneuvering. That would be the only thing that I would add on top of everything else that's already been said. Like I said, this is a great project that I feel just encompasses all the values that we hold near and dear here in Boynton, where we are, you know, proud advocates of affordable housing and mixed income housing. We are, you know, strong believers in giving opportunities to people who want to break ceilings and enter different careers and professions by allowing for, you know, apprentice opportunities and things like that. So all that has been mentioned, so I don't necessarily need to keep reiterating it. I'm just saying that I'm happy that we are all on the same page about how we want this project to proceed forward. And that ends my comments, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vice Chair?
I'm ready to move forward.
All right.
I've been ready 2 meetings ago. I think we're all in agreement. Generally speaking, these bullet points are the right direction. The only thing that I would emphasize, I've said it earlier, I'll say it again, I will be, I'll be paying special attention to verification of financing, as well as protections for the CRA in the city. So those bullet points that discuss first right of refusal or right of first refusal, the reverter clause and such. So I'm ready to go.
Okay. So, Catherine, do we need a motion, or is the consensus that everybody likes what everybody's saying from the CRA good?
You can just give consensus to staff to move forward consistent with your directions and bring you something back.
Okay. So, Michael, do you have any questions with any of the things that the board has said?
No, sir. I really appreciate the board's assistance with this and providing me with the additional evening and discussion. It's I think been very fruitful for both of you and staff. So thank you.
Here.
Yes, Board Member Katz.
Final comment. So with regards to building wealth in the community and thinking back to a proposal from one of our local nonprofit groups, Boynton Strong, where they were talking about wanting to infuse more trades apprenticeships in Boynton Beach and targeting Boynton Beach residents who might not have those skills and might want to get involved in those. One way that I would be in favor of using TIF, which I am in favor of using TIF to facilitate this project in a number of ways, but one way would be to cover some of the increased costs associated with using some of our local union trades. As everyone knows, I'm fond of the unions and support the unions. If we were to incentivize the use of our local trade unions, one, that guarantees that those workers are Palm Beach County residents, that money staying in the community. Two, as part of their involvement in the project, we would have for however long it took for this project to be completed, 18 months, 24 months, whatever a timeline would look like for something of this scope, we would have those trades in our community day in and day out and be able to lean on them to work with the community to educate them on their trade apprentice program, to hold all manner of community engagements where they could, for an extended period of time, hammer anybody who says they want to get trained and they want to become a tradesman or woman. We would have these passionate experts in our community for 2 years. So there's a multiplier effect of using the trades, not just for the quality of their work, but also because they are the best salesmen and women for getting into those apprentice programs. So I just think it would be a good use of TIF dollars to help finance the higher quality work and bring those trades in, so we have a hub for apprentice recruitment in the community. And again, those union trade apprentice programs are free. If you go to them and you say, I'm willing to put in the work and learn how to become an electrician or a welder, they will take you. And as long as you hold up your end of the bargain and put in the work and learn in earnest, you'll get paid honest money. And when you come out with those certifications and those skills, you're going to make more, than I'll ever make as a teacher. So why not bring in those skills for the best product and for the opportunity to foster education in our community? So that's my last statement on that I would heavily favor that, and also be willing to incentivize it with TIF, because again, once the building's done being constructed, the lingering effect of having people recruited into the trades and have those apprentice programs benefit them with education would be a lifelong byproduct that would bring value to our community. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Yes, I'll just simply say that I wholeheartedly support that proposal. I believe it was Mr. Sineas who came here and spoke one day, and was that him, that offered something similar, but I said to him, why start from scratch? I'd rather go with someone who already has a program, who has been doing this for quite some time. So if these trade groups can do it, by all means, I will support that.
And so I'd like to, as our conversation regarding TIF funding, it's not a requirement, so it's not incorporation, but you want to say highly consider.
The incorporation of TIF funds.
Well, it's the question is that, do we want the applicants to have this as a part of their proposal, or do we want them to say we will we are going to consider it as part of the proposal?
You're speaking specifically to the use of union labor for apprentice, or just the use of TIF?
I would say, do you want to have it specific to union labor? Do you want to have it specific to apprenticeship programs? Do you want to have it open to other nonprofits that provide career skills, for example?
I have no problem without defining, a dollar amount, saying that obviously the land and TIF, funds are on the table. I haven't heard anybody say that they're opposed to the utilization for any number of purposes. I would have no problem putting in there as an example, not a requirement. So I guess consideration, not incorporation.
Okay.
The use of local tradesmen and women that would allow for apprenticeship opportunities in the community during the time of construction.
So Thank you. So yeah, so we want to have that as a consideration of not only using local tradespeople, but also having apprenticeship programs, which could be different because some of our local contractors, electricians don't have an apprenticeship program. However, we have other in the county or the area that have these apprenticeship programs. And so it's something that we are considering when making our choice, not incorporating in our decision of a requirement for a union or local. It's something that this board is highly considering when we make our decision based upon not only the local organizations that the applicant has, but the contract that we sign with them to include them in the purchase and sale agreement. Because what we don't want to see is that the applicant ends up saying he has local contractors and then after the purchase and sale agreement uses someone else.
So yes, I have no problem, or I actually, yes, prefer to add that in there. I would go as far, if there were two other people who supported it, putting in there the local trade unions and their apprenticeship program, just because it's a guarantee. If you use one, you get the other. Whereas local contractors that you noted who don't have apprenticeship programs, they might say, yes, we'll bring on, some inexperienced people to train up and put through a program. But the local unions are tried and true in their apprenticeship program. So I would personally be willing to put in their consideration with regards to the use of local union trade associations with their apprenticeship program being a component.
So we're moving from
Well,
consideration.
I would definitely.
I would go that far personally.
Okay. And I'll go with you because
I go
it's something
with
we hear from developers that there's a cost associated with it, and we're going to say, well, that's fine. We have the money to make that up, and part of your financing package, whether it's something that the CRA has to do up front after the purchase and sale or after the developer spends the money, we have that in our budget, or it's something that we use TIF for. And so I'm definitely okay for those two aspects of funding, because we want to make sure that we are training the next generation to have these skills, because we know in the city, we are having trouble finding people with these skills as inspectors.
I appreciate that support, and yeah, we have these conversations, and they've gone back for as many years as I've been on this board and on the commission, and as have you and Commissioner Romulus and Commissioner Hay, Board Member Hayes, been on and off for a number of years. So we talk about it, and we talk about building wealth in the community, and you point out we have these job fairs, and they might not materialize into anything of great value, no matter how much effort we put, but this stuff has been proven to work. And if there is an associated cost with it, that's the cost, I guess, of guaranteeing that we have the skilled labor to put those programs in place. So yeah, I am 100% committed to it if there is support for it.
I believe we have consensus with myself and Board Member Hay.
Yes.
And Vice Chair.
Same here, Chair. I just want to add something. Yes, I would simply add that as we make that partnership, that again, we still give preference to local Boynton Beach residents, because I think at the end of the day, that is the entire intent of this. So yes, we will be partnering, or we intend to partner with the local unions, but we would still want to have these individuals who want to partake in these programs, these apprenticeship programs, to be local Boynton Beach residents. That's the only thing I would add.
So, Michael, so I believe what we want to have is the incorporation of trade unions as part of the application, and consideration of local organizations as well. And the aspect that this board will determine is that, an applicant may say, hey, I have one electrical trade union position, where there's other ones that says, hey, I have it with the steel workers, the pipe fitters. I don't know all the unions, but those are the ones that come off the top of my head. And so that's something that hopefully the unions would be open to, similar to the property owners, to work with multiple applicants, because they know that they'll be part of the selected project. And so, Michael, do you have any questions moving forward?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, some people are listening, so the head shake doesn't work. All right, moving on to item 15D. Consideration of approval of Boynton Village LLC, AKA the Preserves Performance Audit for year ending December 31st, 2020 for compliance with the Direct Incentive Funding Agreement.
Good evening. Good evening, Board Chair and Vice Chair and Board members. My name is Vicki Hill, the Finance Director. Boynton Village LLC, also known as the Preserve, submitted a request for payment with their compliance audit for the 2020 tax year. The developer is in compliance with the terms of the agreement. If approved by the board, the CRA will be issuing year number 6 payment for fiscal year 2021 in the amount of $26,474. Under the terms of the DIFA agreement and including the current reimbursement request for year 6, the CRA has provided a total of $305,467 in property tax increment revenue to Boynton Village LLC. And during the same period, the CRA has retained $556,959 in TRFA. We would ask that the board approve payment to the Preserve in the amount of $26,474. Do you have any questions?
I do, Vicki. What is the ratio of ownership to rentals of the Preserve currently?
Currently, we have 100 rentals and we have 5 homes. So there are 105 units.
Okay. And so this is something that I want to make the CRA board aware when we put items into fee simple, that if we don't have any sort of restrictive language that if we're building single family homes or condos, that an investor may take over. And we kind of want to build wealth in the community through home ownership and equity. So I just want to have that as aware of to the CRA board. May I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion from the board? Hearing none. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
All right. Consideration of an interlocal agreement with the City of Boynton Beach for the design costs associated with the Historic Women's Club of Boynton Beach located at 1010 South Federal Highway.
Yes, Board Chair and Board members, Twee Shut for the record. This item is approval of an interlocal agreement to fund design costs, as the Board Chair stated. The previous ILA was for the actual construction costs, which were to start with fiscal year 2022. This is to be able to utilize funds to start this year with the fiscal year budget 2021, so that the city can enlist and procure services to get going with some of those needed projects, which include ADA accessibility requirements for the bathrooms, the pedestrian crossing across US 1 to enable to dual use of the senior center parking lot and this property, and also window repair and door repairs are among the major items. And with that, attachment in your supporting material, the attachment 5 is the previous approval, and then the attachment 3 is a proposed design service ILA. I'm here for questions if there's any from the board.
I don't have any questions. Does anyone from the board have any?
I do, Chair.
Yes.
I did bring this up with staff earlier. So my question is about, well, first of all, we've previously agreed to 250, up to 250,000 for 3 years. And now there's another request to modify it to add an additional, what number was that?
87,000.
Thank you for that. So what I'm trying to figure out is why can't this cost, why is this cost not included in the previous request? Because the previous request was quite significant. Why is it coming up now, and why can't it be included in the previous 250 agreement? I understand that there's a language situation in the ILA that it does not allow for design services, but that's a language change. But in terms of the money,
Well,
was
yeah, Board Chair, Vice Chair. There's twofold. The previous ILA that was approved back in February envisioned the money to be budgeted for next year. So staff would not be able to make that call to use, this year's money towards that. So the board would have to give us direction for that. Secondly, the 250,000 was anticipated cost for the actual construction of those projects, which staff at that time when they were working, city staff was working with CRA staff, thought a lot of that could be done in-house. But after further evaluation of that, city staff believe that they will need experts or professional consultant services for the improvements to be done. Hence, the design service costs needed to be front through another ILA. We thought it would be cleaner that way versus trying to separate what's design, what's construction, and trying to commingle 2 fiscal years.
okay, and so you're saying that this could not be done in-house? That's why it had to be separate?
Right, especially with the ADA crossing that involves engineering services who has familiarity with the FDOT process. And then also with respect to the ADA bathroom, you would need an in-house, again, architectural services for that as well. There were several other items that may include electrical engineering services as well as structural engineering services, which will be the city will utilize their complementary design services from their professionals, their engineers that's on the rotating list or their architects on the rotating list. So the city doesn't have an in-house staff for that, for those items.
Thank you for that, Twee. The reason that this piqued my interest was just because my common sense tells me I would think that design would precede construction considerations. And so I'm seeing quite the reverse here, and that's why I didn't fully understand. But thank you for that information.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the board? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Chair, I'm not sure if you got a second, but second on that last motion.
I did second.
Okay, I didn't hear it.
No worries. And we have one item left, item 15F, consideration of interlocal agreement with the city of Boynton Beach for improvements to the Sarah Sims Park Amphitheater.
Yes, Board Chair and board members, Michael Simon, Executive Director for the record. This item has been in waiting to be brought back before you. The board previously had approved an interlocal agreement with the city to provide funding to add improvements to the Sarah Sims Park amphitheater as a result of the Sarah Sims Park Improvement Project that we partnered with the city. Once we had approved the ILA as the CRA board, it went into the city's process for approval and discussion. And as a result of that time period of delay before bringing it to the city commission for approval, the city staff was able to really get into a clear architectural construction design plan that involved the ADA ramp, other types of considerations that were not made during the original presentation for the $50,000. So what is in front of you this evening is a request from the city to increase the ILA an additional $100,000 for a total of $150,000 for improvements that were envisioned and perhaps again done at a different level and a more detailed and involved level than previously had thought that they would be able to do with moving dirt and the land around, as was somewhat discussed, to try to get away without having to build a ramp and relocate trees and some other things. So they're also contemplating, electrical upgrades in the stage and sound upgrades. So it looks like Alan has pulled up the rendering, for lack of a better term or word. This is what the panels are proposed to look. It would be color panels on the sides to provide a walled effect, still letting air through and still giving plenty of options for performances, but also creating a backdrop where one does not exist now. It's just wide open. So this kind of closes in the stage. It's certainly more performance friendly to have those types of walls on either side. And then, Alan, if you want to pull up number 4, attachment 4, you'll see the city provided me with, or us, with these detailed images that really get into, I think, the nuts and bolts of what is actually proposed and involved, which is driving those costs up. They were not able to eliminate the idea of an ADA ramp, which, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, is quite significant and involves relocating 2 of the royal palm trees that were planted. There's just no other way to create a ramp, to get up there and meet those requirements. There's also a staircase in the front for those that don't need the ramp. There's electrical outlets in the stage rather than the wall. We learned a little bit from the previous, I guess, the Children's Schoolhouse Museum amphitheater. Those boxes that we had with outlets were not as protected from vandalism, being that they were outside the cement instead of being recessed into the cement. These will be, the stage is going to be approximately 36 inches off of the ground level. So they're going to be adding, a large footer and then 3 scores of concrete block and then another 12-inch slab on top of the existing slab. So you're raising up that height about 3 feet from the ground, which gets, as far as a visual, very similar to the height at our old amphitheater. So it becomes a little bit more, I think, as your vision is more generally acknowledged, you're able to kind of see, I think, where they're headed. There's other pages on this attachment that are technical in nature with regard to how the panels will be made and where they're going to be located. But again, it doesn't show you any colors, which is why I included that other rendering, so you could get a visual idea of how the colors would look. Thank you, Alan. So we again, we're bringing this before you. We have identified the additional $100,000 in funding, which would come from, we're suggesting, since we did not spend, we have $238,000 in the Women's Club improvement fund that we did not use. We could take $100,000 from that and move it over if you so desire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe we needed 2 motions. One would be to rescind the first interlocal agreement for the $50,000. Is that correct? And
Yes,
then
yes, sir, it is.
and then approve a second one for, so I have a motion to rescind the first interlocal agreement.
So moved.
So, second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. May I have a motion to approve the interlocal agreement with the city for an amount not to exceed $150,000?
Second.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And is there anything for future agenda items that the board would like to discuss? All right, Alan, can I please get a closing?
Yes, thank you, Board Chair Grant. As a reminder, a recorded version of this session will be posted to the CRA's YouTube channel. Links to that channel are available on the CRA's website at www.boyntonbeachcra.com. This concludes today's meeting. On behalf of Board Chair Stephen Grant, all our board members, CRA Director, and CRA staff, thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Be safe and have a great evening.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much, board.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Be
night.
blessed. Good night.
Never come on my mic.